You won't believe what happened when our neighborhood's self-appointed rule enforcer Yep. Classic HOA, Karen decided to take things way too far. It all started as a normal weekend. My wife and I were out front unloading boxes into our new home. We'd just moved into this supposedly quiet and respectful gated community, and we were excited to settle in. But within an hour, we met her, the woman every neighborhood seems to have. The one who believes the HOA gives her superpowers. She strutted over, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like a crown of authority, and demanded to know what we were doing on her street. My wife calmly explained we were new residents just moving in. That's when Karen's tone changed. She didn't like the look of us, didn't believe my wife's ID, and flat out accused her of being suspicious just because she was wearing tactical pants and had a government-issued box in hand. Karen actually threatened to report her to Homeland Security. The irony? My wife is Homeland Security. She's worked there for years. But instead of flexing her badge or pulling rank, she tried to de-escalate. That didn't work. Karen called the neighborhood board, then the police. And somehow she even got through to a DHS tip line. From there, things spiraled in a way you wouldn't expect. Let's just say calling the federal government on someone in the federal government doesn't end well, especially when you've fabricated the whole thing. And trust me, the moment Karen realized who my wife actually was, everything changed. But here's the twist: what happened after that shocked us just as much as it shocked her. Stick around, because in the next part, you'll see exactly how my wife handled it, what Homeland Security did in response, and how it completely turned the tables on Karen, the HOA board, and the entire neighborhood. So here's where things got real. Just a few hours after Karen made the call, a couple of black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. Not with sirens or flashing lights, but the kind of quiet, professional presence that makes you feel like something serious is going on. Most neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, whispering and guessing what crime must have gone down. Karen, of course, was standing proudly at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, acting like she'd saved the entire community from some terrible threat. You could practically see her imagining herself as a hero in her own movie. Meanwhile, my wife stayed calm. I've seen her handle high-pressure situations, but this was personal. She didn't want to reveal her position unless she absolutely had to, mainly because she didn't want to embarrass anyone, even Karen. She believed in letting the process speak for itself. But once the agents stepped out and recognized her, it was game over. One of them even gave her a respectful nod and quietly said, "Ma'am, we weren't expecting to see you here." Karen's face shifted instantly from smug to confused. She started pacing, asking questions, even trying to explain that she was just doing her duty as a resident. She claimed my wife was moving suspicious boxes and wouldn't say what was inside. Spoiler: those boxes were official training materials and locked tech she was transferring for a DHS briefing, all properly logged with security seals intact. But here's where it got deeper. One of the agents asked Karen how she got the direct DHS number she called. And that's when the entire situation took a turn none of us expected. Turns out Karen might have had more connections or secrets than we originally thought. And what happened next didn't just affect our move-in day, it exposed something much bigger. The moment Karen was asked how she got access to that DHS number, everything shifted. She stumbled through an explanation, saying she'd once volunteered for a national security watch group, but the details were vague, too vague. My wife caught the hesitation immediately. The agents exchanged looks, clearly picking up on something deeper. That's when one of them discreetly pulled out a tablet and began running her name. The air was thick with tension. Neighbors had started gathering at a distance, pretending to water lawns or walk dogs, but everyone was watching closely now. You could feel it. This wasn't just about a nosy neighbor anymore. My wife stayed quiet, letting them do their job. but I could tell she was on high alert. Karen kept shifting her story. First, it was a neighborhood safety group, then some kind of online citizen reporting task force. None of it made sense. And then things got even more strange. One of the agents quietly mentioned that Karen's name had come up before, flagged for overreporting in multiple neighborhoods across different states. That's when we realized this wasn't her first HOA power trip. She'd apparently lived in several communities before Arzon had called in federal tips at almost every one. Meanwhile, the HOA president showed up, clearly panicked. He tried to smooth things over, but he looked nervous, like he knew something we didn't. My wife pulled him aside and asked directly if Karen had any formal role with the board. His answer was just a slow nod, followed by, "She's involved, more than she should be." That didn't sound good. Back at our place, the sealed boxes Karen had complained about were still untouched. One agent asked to scan them as part of protocol. My wife agreed, and everything checked out. But then, Karen did something we didn't see coming. She made a call of her own. And whoever was on the other end answered fast. That's when things really started unraveling. Karen turned her back to us, stepped a few feet away, and made that mysterious call. She spoke in hushed tones, but her body language said everything's holders stiff. Head darting around, glancing over at the agents, and then quickly away. Whatever was being said on the other end, it wasn't casual. The agent nearest us leaned in and whispered to my wife, "We need to find out who she just contacted." Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Then, not 10 minutes later, another car, one we hadn't seen before, pulled up. It wasn't marked, but the way Karen walked straight to it told us she'd been waiting for it. Out stepped a man in a sharp suit, no visible badge, but an attitude like he owned the place. He didn't introduce himself, didn't flash credentials. Just said, "I'm here to handle this." One of the DHS agents stepped in front of him, asked for ID, and the man's entire tone shifted now, annoyed, almost defensive. At this point, our driveway was full of quiet chaos. Agents in earpieces, Karen trying to spin a story about ongoing investigations, and this mystery man trying to shut things down before anyone got real answers. The HOA president looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. My wife, though, wasn't rattled. She calmly requested that everything be documented. "If there's something deeper going on here," she said, "we're not walking away from it." That's when the agent scanning Karen's record suddenly stopped and looked up. "We've got a hit. There's more here than we thought." His tone was serious. Alarms weren't blaring, but every movement slowed. Karen tried to act clueless, but her eyes darted nervously. Something was about to crack open. The truth was right, they're just out of reach. And what came next would turn the entire situation on its head. The moment the agent said, "We've got a hit," everything froze. Karen's fake calm vanished, replaced by a mix of panic and rage. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, the agent raised a hand and said, "Ma'am, we need you to stay exactly where you are." The man in the suit stepped in, trying to intervene again, but now the agents weren't having it. One of them gently but firmly asked for his identification. Not this time. He reluctantly handed over a badge. It was real, but not federal. Private security. That's when things started clicking into place. My wife leaned toward me and whispered, "She's not just some pushy HOA busybody. She's been using her position for something else." We were beginning to understand that. Karen wasn't acting out of petty HOA power. She had a pattern. These reports she made in different neighborhoods weren't just baseless complaints. She'd been gathering information, possibly even misusing neighborhood watch programs for her own agenda. And the worst part? Someone had been backing her. One of the agents pulled the HOA president aside for a quiet word. When he returned, he looked shaken. "I didn't know about any of this," he muttered. "She told us she had federal clearance. Said she was helping with national security from within the neighborhood. Turns out she'd been pressuring the HOA to hand over resident lists, property details, and even install additional surveillance things. They assumed we're part of an official program, but the biggest twist came moments later. Another agent, who had been digging through DHS logs, looked up and said, 'There's an active internal investigation, and her name's been mentioned before.' That changed everything. Now it wasn't just about us, or even the HOA. It was something bigger, something she'd been involved in long before we moved here, and we were caught right in the middle of it." As soon as the internal investigation was mentioned, Karen's entire demeanor cracked. She tried to backtrack, claiming everything was a misunderstanding, that she was only trying to protect the neighborhood. But the agents weren't listening. Anymore, they had the digital trail. Dozens of complaints across different communities, each one tied to suspicious activity reports. Some even flagged by DHS for false intel submissions. My wife stepped forward, calm but firm, and asked the lead agent, "Is she under active review?" The agent nodded. "Yes, and we've just confirmed she accessed databases she should have never had access to." The man in the suit tried once more to defend her, but the agents were already pulling records. Turns out he worked for a private security contractor. Karen had ties with one that had lost a government contract a year ago due to misuse of resident data. That's when it clicked for everyone. Karen had been building profiles, weaponizing HOA authority, and feeding selective information to this company to help push for reinstatement through false neighborhood intel. It wasn't just about controlling a gated community, it was about leveraging fear for personal gain. Then came the unexpected twist. As Karen was being questioned and quietly escorted away for further investigation, the agent my wife had worked with pulled her aside and said, "You were never supposed to move here, were you?" "We were confused," he continued. "You were placed here for a reason. We were tracking her already. Your transfer wasn't random." My wife looked stunned. DHS had positioned her here as part of a larger sting, but hadn't told her directly to keep everything clean. So unknowingly, she'd walked right into a live operation to Karen's final stronghold. As the SUVs finally pulled away, and the neighborhood returned to an easy silence, we realized the move we thought was about settling down had actually helped shut down a years-long scheme, and the quiet cul-de-sac we'd chosen. It had been the final piece in a very real federal investigation. After everything finally settled, we stood there for a long moment, just taking it all in. The neighborhood looked the same: quiet streets, trimmed lawns, kids riding bikes, but everything had changed. Karen was gone. The HOA board later held an emergency meeting and officially removed her from any position she held. Turns out many residents had felt uneasy around her for years, but were too intimidated to speak up. Now, with the truth out, people were finally talking. A lot of them came by to apologize or just thank my wife for staying calm when things could have gone sideways. DHS never gave us all the details, but a few weeks later, my wife got a quiet commendation for assisting with an ongoing operation. We never expected moving into a new house would turn into a federal takedown, but in a strange way, it reminded us why she does what she does to protect, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's close to home. We've since settled in, and the community actually feels like a neighborhood now. The new HOA board has been more transparent and even invited my wife to consult on setting healthy boundaries for safety without overreach. It's ironic Karen tried to run the place through fear, and in the end, it took honesty and calm leadership to bring peace. If there's anything to take from this story, it's that not everyone who claims authority is acting in good faith. Sometimes people hide behind rules to push their own agenda. But the truth It always finds its way through. And sometimes, the person you underestimated, like my wife unloading boxes in tactical pants, is the one who ends up exposing everything. That's the story of how HOA Karen called Homeland Security, without knowing she was already standing face to face with it.